My sister, who had already been chosen as a regular bridesmaid, suddenly started demanding to be made the maid of honor instead of me at our other sister's wedding. She created a whole drama, insisting that she deserved more attention and a more special role. The situation quickly turned into a full-blown scandal, and her selfish demands made the entire wedding planning experience tense and unpleasant. I saw Cassie grab the earring box, smile, and then throw a scornful look at me, like I had stolen something precious from her. I was 26, working in marketing and living on my own for years, while Layla, my older sister, was 28, expecting a baby and planning a simple backyard wedding at our parents' house. The day Layla gave us the little gift boxes, one for me, Cassie, and her best friend Savannah, I truly thought everything was going right. My box was labeled Maid of Honor. Theirs simply said Bridesmaid. But judging by Cassie's expression, for her, it was just the beginning of a battle. Layla and I grew up poor until Mom met our stepdad. Cassie was born into comfort, a house full of toys, clothes, and endless presents. And from childhood, she believed the best should always be hers. I always knew that, but still hoped things would be different at Layla's wedding. A few weeks after the engagement, it became clear Cassie wasn't planning to be just another guest. She barely participated in the planning, constantly scoffing at our ideas, calling the decorations cheap and the backyard choice boring beyond words. Layla tried so hard to involve her, inviting her to shopping trips, asking for help with handmade invitations, but each time Cassie would roll her eyes and sulk in silence. The real blow came during the dress shopping trip. Mom, Layla, Savannah, and I found light blue summer dresses at H&M, simple and perfect for a small outdoor wedding. Cassie, however, threw a tantrum, demanding a designer bridesmaid dress worth $2,000, even though Layla's own wedding dress cost way less. After hours of drama, she finally announced she found the perfect blue dress in her closet. We breathed a sigh of relief, until we saw her show up in a glittery, over-the-top prom dress with a plunging neckline and a massive tiara on her head. Everyone froze. Then she crossed her arms and declared, "I'm the maid of honor. Of course I should wear a crown." Her words hung in the air like a weight. Layla turned pale. Mom awkwardly looked away, and I could feel my patience snapping at the seams. I knew it was going to be the worst day of our lives, but even then, I had no idea just how far it would all go. After Cassie's words, the room fell into dead silence. Layla forced a tight smile, nervously pulling at the hem of her maternity dress, but Cassie, sensing the slightest hesitation, only pushed harder. She pouted and loudly repeated, "I'm the maid of honor." I instinctively glanced at Mom, hoping she would step in and say something, anything, but she just awkwardly looked away. And then Layla, her voice barely above a whisper, said, "Fine. You can be the maid of honor." I saw something break inside her in that moment, and it was unbearable. Cassie beamed, twirling dramatically in her sparkling dress, the tiara slipping sideways on her head. Mom clapped her hands like we had just avoided some major disaster, and Dad mumbled something about keeping the peace. No one looked at me. No one remembered that Layla had originally entrusted that role to me. I clenched my fists silently, trying not to lose it. That night, I fled to my car, slammed the door, and sat there in the dark, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream from the hurt and rage. It wasn't just about the title. It was about trust, about love, about all the years I had spent being pushed aside every time Cassie demanded more, louder, flashier, pricier, and got away with it. Even now. Even with Layla's tears. Later, Layla texted me a long apology, begging me to still be her bridesmaid. I could have told her it was okay, that I understood she just wanted peace. But something inside me had snapped. I replied that I would stay. But deep down, I decided Cassie could think she won. I would do everything in my power to save Layla's day. I wouldn't let that spoiled brat turn my sister's wedding into her personal circus. I sat there in the car for a long time, staring into the night, knowing this time would be different. When we gathered at our parents' house to try on dresses, I immediately felt a strange tension. Carrie was sitting on the couch with her arms crossed, pouting as if she had already been forced to do something horrible. Laura suggested that each of us pick a simple, affordable blue dress so that all the bridesmaids would look coordinated. Charlotte and I quickly found suitable options. Light, elegant dresses, perfect for a cozy backyard wedding. Mom chose a classic lace dress, and I picked a lightweight cotton sundress with a floral pattern. We were smiling and discussing the details while Carrie dramatically scrolled through her phone. At some point, she looked up, grimaced, and announced that she would not show up in such cheap rags. Everyone froze. Mom calmly explained that even Laura's wedding dress cost less than $2,000, but Carrie just pouted and stormed off to her room, slamming the door. A few days later, she announced she had found a dress at home. We were relieved, thinking the worst was over. But when she walked out in her old prom dress covered in rhinestones, I realized how wrong I was. It was a shimmery rose gold color, puffy, and barely held her bust in the tight bodice. A tiara sparkled on her head. The room fell silent. I was the first to break it, gently asking if she thought the dress might be too extravagant for a small backyard wedding. Carrie crossed her arms and confidently declared, "I'm the maid of honor. Of course, I have to stand out." Laura paled, then weakly replied that I was the maid of honor, while Carrie and Charlotte were just bridesmaids. It hit like a bomb. Carrie trembled with rage, ripped the tiara off her head, and threw it on the floor. She started screaming hysterically, accusing Laura of betrayal and me of jealousy. Mom tried to calm her down, but Carrie only screamed louder, demanding the decision be reversed. It was one of the most awkward and painful moments our family had ever experienced. After Carrie's tantrum, the whole house sank into a sticky, suffocating silence. Laura locked herself in her room, crying her heart out. My parents argued downstairs, and I sat on the staircase, clenching my fists in helpless anger. After a while, Laura came out with swollen eyes and quietly said she couldn't take another scene. She had decided to give in to Carrie and hand over the title of Maid of Honor just to keep the peace. I wanted to scream from the unfairness, but I understood that Laura's peace of mind was more important now, especially for the baby's sake. A few days passed, but inside me everything was still boiling. Every time I saw Carrie strutting around the house with her head held high as if nothing had happened, I felt a knot tightening inside. She bragged about her new pink designer dress, proudly posting pictures on social media with captions about how happy she was to be the chosen one, while Laura struggled to smile through the pain. My mother pretended nothing serious had happened, urging everyone to move on, and only I couldn't forgive or forget. Carrie basked in her victory, completely unaware of how much pain she had caused Laura. And Laura, pregnant and exhausted, forced a smile so that no one would see how much she was suffering. Every day it became harder for me to watch this circus. I realized that staying silent only made it worse. One evening, after replaying the events in my mind for the 100th time, I finally understood. If I didn't confront Carrie directly, everything would keep getting worse. Not just for me, but for Laura and the entire family. I decided I had to act, even if it meant unleashing another storm. The morning after everything collapsed felt heavier than any hangover. I sat in my car for almost an hour outside Carrie's house, trying to convince myself not to just drive away. But I had promised Laura, and after everything she'd endured, I wasn't about to back down. When I finally rang the doorbell, Carrie opened the door with that same smug look she always wore when she thought she had won. I could almost see the imaginary crown sitting on her head. I stepped inside and asked if we could talk privately. Carrie rolled her eyes but led me to the living room. I didn't waste time. I told her flat out that screaming at a pregnant woman and manipulating her way into being maid of honor was beyond selfish. It was cruel. Carrie crossed her arms and sneered, "You're just jealous that she picked me." It took every ounce of self-control not to laugh in her face. I reminded her that I had been chosen from the beginning, that Laura had only caved because she was too exhausted to fight anymore. Carrie scoffed and said that if Laura was so weak, maybe she didn't deserve a big wedding at all. I felt my hands clench involuntarily. I said calmly that regardless of what she thought, her behavior was unacceptable, and until she apologized to Laura and everyone she disrespected, she wasn't welcome at the bachelorette party or in any part of the preparations. Carrie's face twisted in anger, and she accused me of trying to destroy her relationship with Laura out of spite. I told her the only one destroying anything was herself. At that moment, Mom entered the room, arms crossed, lips pursed. She said I was causing unnecessary drama, that Carrie's actions were just a young woman's emotional outburst. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I turned to Carrie one last time and said, "You owe everyone in this family an apology. Until then, don't contact me." I walked out before they could say another word, heart pounding, feeling like I had just slammed a door on years of pent-up resentment. Driving home, I realized that no matter how much they twisted things, I knew the truth. And I wasn't going to let guilt trap me again. A week passed after I confronted Carrie, and the silence was almost eerie. No angry texts, no phone calls, no sudden drama exploding through the family group chat. I knew better than to trust the quiet. Laura seemed lighter, though, like some invisible weight had been lifted off her shoulders, and seeing her happy made every awkward moment with Carrie worth it. We threw ourselves into wedding preparations with renewed energy, finalizing the guest list, picking the flowers, even baking cupcakes for the reception, because Laura insisted she wanted everything homemade. It felt like old times before all the chaos. Charlotte and I organized a small, intimate bachelorette party for Laura at my apartment. Nothing fancy, just close friends, laughter, and lots of ice cream. Carrie, of course, was not invited. The night was pure magic. We made flower crowns, watched terrible rom-coms, and Laura actually laughed so hard she cried. It was everything I wanted for her. A night where she didn't have to think about family pressure or looming disasters, but it couldn't stay perfect forever. 2 days later, Laura received a long, dramatic email from Carrie accusing her of abandoning family and being brainwashed by jealous people. It wasn't even coherent, just a messy outpouring of guilt trips and half-baked accusations. Laura showed it to me with shaking hands and asked if she should respond. I told her no. Carrie was looking for a reaction, and we weren't going to give her the satisfaction. Meanwhile, word got around that Carrie had been posting about the toxic environment in our family on social media. Not naming names, but it was obvious enough. Relatives started reaching out, asking what was happening. It was exhausting. Laura was visibly stressed and kept blaming herself, and no matter how many times I reassured her, I could see the fear creeping back into her eyes. The fear that maybe she was the bad guy after all. That night, sitting on my couch, I made a decision. I wasn't just going to stand by and watch Laura be torn apart anymore. If Carrie wanted a war, she was going to get it. But this time, on my terms. The day of the wedding arrived faster than any of us expected. I woke up before sunrise, my stomach churning with a mix of excitement and dread. Today was supposed to be about Laura and Alan, about celebrating their love. But deep down, I knew Carrie would find a way to make it about herself. Still, I plastered on my best smile, helped Laura into her gorgeous dress, and reassured her over and over that everything would be fine. The ceremony was set up beautifully in the backyard of Alan's parents' farm. Simple, charming, and full of little handmade details that Laura had poured her heart into. As guests began to arrive, I noticed Carrie strutting around in that ridiculous pink designer dress, tiara sparkling in the sunlight like some twisted parody of a princess. She didn't speak to anyone, just floated around, basking in the attention. I tried to ignore her. We had bigger things to focus on. When the ceremony started, I stood proudly at Laura's side, holding her bouquet during the vows. Watching her smile through happy tears made all the chaos feel almost worth it. Almost. The trouble really started during the reception. Carrie drank too much, far too early. I saw her stumbling around, pulling people aside to whisper about how hard her life had been lately. Then, during Laura and Alan's first dance, Carrie stormed onto the dance floor in the middle of the song, shouting that it wasn't fair she didn't get a special dance too. Everyone froze. Laura's face turned pale, and for a second I thought she might run. But Alan held her hand tightly, and they finished the dance like nothing happened. That should have been the end of it, but Carrie wasn't done. When it came time for speeches, she grabbed the mic uninvited and launched into a rambling, bitter monologue about betrayal, family loyalty, and being pushed out. It was barely coherent and painfully awkward. Laura looked like she was about to cry. That was it for me. I walked straight up to the DJ, told him to cut the mic, and dragged Carrie outside before she could do any more damage. She fought me the whole way, calling me names, saying I ruined her life. But I didn't care anymore. Today wasn't about Carrie. It was about Laura, and I was done letting anyone ruin that. After dragging Carrie outside and slamming the door behind us, I stood there in the crisp night air, trying to catch my breath while she kept screaming about how unfair everything was. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just stood still until she finally tired herself out and stormed off into the parking lot. I went back inside, brushing stray hair out of my face, and found Laura sitting at the family table, her hands shaking slightly as Alan whispered something calming in her ear. I sat down beside her and simply squeezed her hand. No speeches, no dramatic declarations, just a silent promise that she wasn't alone. The rest of the reception was quieter, lighter even, once Carrie's heavy, toxic presence was gone. People laughed, ate, and danced. Laura smiled again. Real smiles this time, the kind that reached her eyes. Watching her glow as Alan spun her around the dance floor made every single miserable moment leading up to this feel like it had been worth it. Later that night, after the guests had left and the fairy lights above the backyard flickered against the stars, Laura pulled me aside. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you. You saved today." I didn't cry, not until I got home and closed the door behind me. Then the weight of everything. The years of family dysfunction, the fights, the heartbreak, the exhaustion, finally hit me, and I let the tears fall. I wasn't sad. Not exactly. It felt more like grieving for what could have been, for the family we never really had, no matter how much we all pretended. In the days that followed, Carrie tried to reach out a few times, leaving long, rambling messages blaming everyone but herself for what happened. I didn't answer. Neither did Laura. For the first time in my life, I realized that setting boundaries didn't make me cruel. It made me free. Carrie's chaos wasn't my responsibility to fix anymore. I was done trying to earn love that should have been unconditional from the start. I had a sister who loved me, a future niece or nephew to spoil, and a future full of peace instead of drama. And honestly, that was enough. More than enough.